Hi, it's Paul Antonelli here. Welcome to another episode of the Ideal Business Podcast. Okay, how much money is enough? It's an interesting question. One of the things, obviously, as business owners, one of the reasons that we go into business is to create financial independence, so we can do the things that we want and look after those close to us, family and friends, and be able to help other people. Depending on what stage and where you're at with your business journey, it's a really good question to sort of work out for yourself, because it does vary, how much money is enough. How much money is enough? And probably the way that I've sort of looked at it is thinking a little bit about, there's a certain amount of money. And I've asked a lot of people this question, when I talk to, for example, in Resi, how much money would you consider is a really good amount of income that you can earn without having to work, like a passive income level? I've asked a lot of people, and what seems to be the response that comes out is that for most people, when I've asked this question, and I'm talking about passive income, it's about 15 to 20,000 a month. Whether that's US dollars, Canadian dollars, Australian dollars, euros, whatever it is, it's about 15 to 20,000 a month. And what most people, when I talk to people, say, look, if I was able to earn 15 to 20 grand a month and have great flexibility and control of my time, then it would be a really good outcome. And it's interesting to consider when you're in business and you look at growing. It's obviously not the only reason why we go into business. We have a purpose, we've got things we want to get done, we want to have some impact on the other areas, but the income thing is a really, really big part of it. What tends to happen is we can forget about actually what we set out to achieve once we've achieved it. And then the bar keeps moving to the next sort of goal, which can be a little bit problematic, So what that means, for example, is that you might say originally, look, if I can get my business where I'm able to pull out 10K a month, that'd be great. And then you get to 10K a month, and it's not quite enough. So they say, if I can get to 15K a month, and so then you get to 15K, and then you get to 20K a month, and then you get to, and it sort of always never ends, And ultimately, it's a really good idea to establish for yourself and for your partner, or if you've got business partners or life partners, how much money is actually enough? When do you get to a point where the amount of income that you're getting, anything above and beyond that's nice, but it's going to have a minimal impact on your life and how you spend your time and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, to really consider that question, a lot of it is dependent on what it is that you want to be doing. What do you want to do? What do you want to do with your time? What do you want to do with your money? And being able to look at, your cost of living and the things that frustrate you at the moment and say, look, it would be really, really good if that was handled. And sort of framing that up a little bit can give you a couple of things that I think's important. You can sort of set yourself a goal, to say, what I really want to achieve is X dollars per month as passive income. And the idea of passive income, it means that you have really good control over your time. You can be anywhere you like, and it really, in essence, is just income that you generate based on your business and the income that your business generates. So it's really good to try to establish that and think that through. And then what will happen is the motivations for trying to grow the business or earn more money or make more money then can be a little bit different. Now, there's two parts. Obviously, it's quite interesting to consider. There's two sort of aspects of building wealth. One of them is building an asset base. So it's a bit of a catch-22. You sort of need to earn some cash, you need to earn extra money, and then you'll be able to determine how you can point that money so that you can build up your asset base. And once you've built up your asset base, then you can start seeing how that asset base can start generating revenue for you. And so it's a bit of a process to do that. For us, we've sort of built, we've got quite a large property investment portfolio that we built up over, I guess it's been over 25 years now. It's a fairly strong portfolio and very strong from a cash flow perspective. And so we're at a stage where we're not necessarily focused on continuing to grow our asset base. we're more interested in seeing how we can generate cash flow. And we're at a stage of life where we don't really need to take a lot of risks. So we've got a pretty low risk profile. And so we're looking at, okay, so do we want to continue to increase our asset base? Does that make sense where we're at? Or how do we look at how we can create more cash flow without too much focus necessarily on growing the asset base? So look, there's two aspects to it. We're considering that at the moment. So for example, with our property portfolio, it's pretty strong cash flow wise. It actually does generate a profit at the moment. It's not as much as we'd like, but it does generate a profit. And so now we're starting to look at how we can strengthen the cash flow in our property portfolio. And one of the processes that we're looking at the moment is focusing a little bit more on short-term accommodation to improve the cash flow. So we've done some modeling on that. It seems to make a bit of sense. And so that's a way that we can go, look, how do we improve our property portfolio, not just continually increase our equity, increase the value of it, but actually how do we improve the cash flow of it? Of course, for every, when you're looking at your own personal scene and you're looking at, how much cash you need to generate, I think you'd probably agree with me that if you could generate $15,000 to $20,000 every month in that range and not have to get too involved and be able to have great control over your time, great flexibility, then you'd go, that's a really, really good outcome. And that was sort of our initial goal of what we wanted to achieve. We really wanted to get to the point where we could generate that 15 to 20K of cash flow and be able to not be too connected. We have achieved that. We sort of achieved that quite a few years back, and we've sort of passed that now. And there's two parts of it as well when you consider how much money is enough. One of the things considers the business profitability, and keeping in mind that your business isn't actually you're two separate entities. So we run all our business entities, our property portfolio, InvizBiz, ResiCert, the franchising business, all these as separate businesses, and really keep a really close track on their cash flow and look at their profitability separately. And I've just got a philosophy is I don't mix money up. They're all separate, they're all independent, and you just run everything completely separately, which is a really good habit to get into, because if something's not performing that well, it becomes pretty obvious, where sometimes when you're pushing money around all over the place, tends to hide issues or problems. So that's a philosophy. It's just the way we run it. And of course, one of the things is, the businesses that we've got are fairly profitable, but we're also looking at how much cash can we take out? What amount of cash do we need to be able to draw on a monthly basis or over a period of a year to do some of the different things that we want to do. And so we have mapped that out, and we look at it and we break that down into two sort of equations. The first thing is the amount of cash that we want to generate every month, regardless of what we do, where we are, all that sort of stuff. And so that's a fixed amount that we take as drawings on a weekly basis, and that money just comes across to us. And that's a baseline that we've set ourselves. And then we also determine we're going to plan some investments, we might do some improvements, look at some travel, other things beyond and above that. And so then we look at what sort of other cash do we want to get access to. And that's a little bit separate, because you've got this regular, predictable baseline level of cash. And that sort of is when we consider how much cash is enough for us, we go, well, that's the minimum amount that we want to be able to take out every month, hail, rain or shine. And then we've got a plan. We're saying, well, look, obviously we're going to generate more than that income. And so what would we do with the other income? And the other income can be a little bit more lumpy, if that makes sense. So it doesn't have to be weekly or monthly. We can sort of build up some sort of a reserve process so that we can get access to it when we've got somewhere to utilize that cash, whether it's an investment or looking at another business or anything that it might be. One of the things that I do, which is often a challenge as a business owner, is to go, when can I take money out of the business? If you listen to my financial stability process, one of the allocations things, the categories allocate is what I call management fees. And this isn't our baseline income that we take every week. This is above and beyond. It's sort of like the principle of every time you sort of pull a bit of cash out of the ATM, if you pull out 100, take 20 and stick it in a savings box or put it into a savings in an envelope, and you'll find out you'll build that up. It's a similar principle. So when I'm doing my allocations, when there's a bit of spare cash around, I'll direct some money into the management account. It might be $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, depending on where the cash position is. And I just let that build up over a month or a couple of months. And then I look at how the business is tracking and I go, well, the business doesn't really need it. Everything else seems to be tracking nicely. And so then I know I can actually transfer that money out to us or utilize it for some other purpose. So it's creating a level of discipline about how you manage your cash. But I would really strongly encourage you to think about how much money is enough. How much do you want? And if you haven't had that discussion or thought about it, I'd really encourage you to do that. And the process is to look at if you're able to, and the key is, this is the key, because you want to get to that point where you may still want to work in the business, but you want to be able to generate a level of income that's not dependent on your activity within the business. And that's quite different, because if you are undertaking functions or roles within your business, if you wanted to pass them on, then you'd have to pay someone to do that. And so that would be an increasing cost. So you want to look at what you need to do to your business to get it to that point. And you can choose to do activity, but you've also got enough cash flow that you go, look, I'm done. I'm not doing that activity anymore. I'm not going to get involved in sales or the IT side of it or whatever it is that you do. And then you can engage someone knowing that the profitability and the cash flow is there to do that. So it's a bit of an approach that I utilize. I'd really encourage you to think carefully about how much money is enough. Use a bit of a process of breaking it down, saying, well, this is how much we'd use to cover our basic living costs and pay a mortgage and fees and all that sort of stuff. And then we'd want X dollars a month for, above and beyond, and, which is really discretionary money, because that is something to celebrate when you can get your business to that point. And also by having that benchmark, when you're moving towards it. When you don't identify it clearly as a number, when you don't go, look, I'm after 15,000 a month, then you don't know, you're sort of always in a hurry to get somewhere, and you don't feel like you're really achieving what you wanted to be achieving. But if you started your business and you get into a point, you're going 3K a month, then you might get it to 5, then you might get it to 7, then you might get it to 9, then you might get it to 12. That's progress, eh? That's actually progress which you can measure and you can celebrate as you move through the cycle of growing and expanding your business. What it does stop you doing potentially, and that's, for me, as you've probably worked out, in building the ideal business, it's not just about making more money, becoming wealthier, more assets, all that sort of stuff. That's great, but there's only a certain point, there's a certain level of assets and income that you need to have a really good life, and you can do really whatever it is that you want. Above and beyond that, it doesn't have the same bang for buck, if that makes sense. And so we've sort of determined that, we actually don't spend a lot of money. I love, like I'm currently building a shed, for example. I guess if I'd paid someone to do the shed, it might have been $60 or $70 or $80,000. I've got the time. I quite enjoy doing that activity, and I'll go through and do that myself and get some people involved in it. And so that's just something that I choose. I prefer to have time so I can spend that time doing the other activity, which might have some commercial or economic impact, but it also enables me to do stuff that I enjoy away from the business, some of that physical construction type activity. So that's the beauty of choice. So hopefully this has sort of prompted you to think a little bit about the question of how much money is enough. If you haven't done that before, I'd really encourage you to do that. And I guess the first benchmark is generate a level of income that's not passive, but you're generating that income, and then working out how you increase that income. And you might increase it, and it's not necessarily passive, but you might get yourself down to 2 or 3 days a week. It's obviously a bit of a transition process. And then you might go, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wind back the number of days, engage other people as the business grows and expands, so that you can hit that benchmark of achieving your minimum baseline predictable cash flow. So yeah, have a bit of fun with it. I find it keeps you focused, enables you to celebrate, and it's been something that's been really, really useful for us in the way that we've gone about building our business and building our wealth. Ciao for now, and catch up with you the next podcast episode.